Good afternoon, and thank you all for standing by. At this time, I would like to inform all participants that your lines have been placed on a listen-only mode until the question and answer session of today's call. I would also like to inform you today's call is being recorded. If you do have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. And I would now like to introduce your first speaker, Ms. Rosa Pace. Ma'am, you may begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our webinar on Basic Guide to Exporting, How to Write an Export Plan. I'm Róża Pace, a Senior International Trade Specialist with the Trade Information Center. The Trade Information Center is part of U.S. Commercial Service at the Department of Commerce. Today, I'd like to welcome all U.S. Commercial Service clients and other webinar participants in the export community who are joining us from all across the U.S. to learn about how to write an export plan. We are very happy to note that we are having today a very diverse group of participants. You are all very important to make President's National Export Initiative a resounding success. This free webinar is part of the series of Export Basics webinars that are brought to you as part of this important initiative. Our speaker for today will be Dr. Douglas Berry, who is Senior International Trade Specialist at the Trade Information Center. Our speaker will be available at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. The operator will put you in a queue to have your line taken off mute to ask you any questions that you may have. And contact information will also be provided at the end of the webinar if you have additional questions after the event. You will be able to hear the presentation via the telephone and view it simultaneously via your computer. If you are not hooked up through both, please take a moment to do so. If you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please press *0 anytime during this presentation. Now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce Dr. Douglas Berry. Berry, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Róża, and good afternoon, everyone. Róża, if you could have Jacob Nixon pop by the office. Someone's trying to get into the program this afternoon, and I'll give Jacob some instructions on how to help that person.
Okay.
But would like to welcome everyone, and I think we're going to have a very interesting afternoon today. And hopefully what we will have to share with you will launch your export business, or if you've already started, it will get it well on its way. First, the program today will take about 50 minutes, and we will finish maybe 10 minutes before the hour, and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask some questions. And remember that everyone will get a copy of this presentation. You'll be able to look at the slides and print them off if you'd like, and also listen to the audio portion of it, because we will be going through quite a bit of material this afternoon, and probably you will want to study a little bit some of the sections of it as we go through them. And remember, feel free, you can always call us here at the Trade Information Center after today. We'll be happy to walk you through some additional parts of this, and we will be happy to answer the questions that you might have. So let's begin at the beginning, and here you see one of our clients. This is a company in what used to be called the Rust Belt now, but here is a very successful manufacturing enterprise. It's called Pro Stuff, and they make starting gates for bicycle racers. There you see one of his clients there, the young woman from Colombia. This is at a trade show and an event in Colombia where his devices are used. The interesting part of this story is this individual is now in 41 different markets, 41 countries he's selling his devices into, and he is 6 employees, himself and 5 others. They manufacture these devices and they ship them all over the world. And he is a very small plan. He has a 1-page plan. And he is now on this plan. It's mainly about sales goals. He has some numeric goals for his sales during the course of a calendar year, And in the second part, it's mainly about getting the product out of the door as quickly as possible and to his customers. The other part of it is that he is able to work very closely with the Commerce Department. So in his plan, he clearly states that in order to find new buyers in new countries, he's going to work very closely with his local Export Assistance Center. There are 100 of them all over the country. And he goes there quite often to get information on new opportunities in new markets around the world. And the opportunities are not just people that he might sell to, but there are also the identification of market barriers and difficulties that he might encounter en route, which will help him deal with those barriers so that he is able to sell more effectively into those markets. Now, the value of the plan. It's clear, and one of the reasons, the main reason for offering this program, is that 60% of all U.S. exporters do not have a written export plan. 67%. And you might say, well, if 67% of exporters don't have a plan and they're successful, then why should I have a plan? And I think this slide helps answer that question. And to me, it is if you have sales to international customers today, imagine the additional sales you could have if you had a more strategic approach to finding and serving those customers. So the benefits of the plan, first of all, they can identify the strengths and weaknesses that you have as a company and as an individual as you prepare to increase your international sales or begin them for the first time. The other part of it is that having a written plan there makes certain that you're not likely to lose track of the export strategy that you've developed. And the reason this is important is because if you have sales domestically, that your company was not started to serve the international market, but was started to mainly deal with domestic demand, as you continue to serve that domestic demand, you don't want to make sure that you go back to that old strategy where exporting just becomes a once in a while, some of the time thing, but is actually front and center in your thinking and in your planning for the future. The other is that it allows you to identify the financing, if you need any, to build up your export capabilities and that part of your company that's going to deal with exporting. The other part of it is that you can then communicate your goals and your vision and the tactics that you're going to identify. And we'll be talking a lot about tactics later in the program. And you'll be able to communicate this across the organization. If there's only 2 or 3 of you, or 6, as in the case of our friend from ProStuff, the maker of the bicycle starting gates, then it's not going to be so difficult to sit around having coffee in the morning and being able to do those kinds of things. So that is the beauty of this, is that it will really improve the communication. And then it also helps you assign responsibility, not only to yourself, who may be driving the export initiative, but those people who you have with you. And then one of the most important things is that you can actually measure your success against the goals that you have set forth in the written plan. So those are just a few of the value points of having the plan. Some additional ones are it will help you challenge the assumptions which you can then use to provide insights into other opportunities that are available to you. And by assumptions, I mean that today you may harbor some. Some of those assumptions might be that you're too small to be successful in the export market. It's never going to be more than a marginal thing for you. Another might be that there may not be enough buyers online to be able to order products via the internet from you. Another assumption might be that the documentation and the regulations for going into one country or another are so complicated that you, as an individual business person, will never be able to figure it out. And I would say that none of those assumptions are correct, But the important thing is to lay them out, write them down. It's only in a paragraph. You can identify what they are, and you can then deal with them. And let me promise you that for each of the assumptions that I mentioned and the others that you might have, there is an answer to them. And in many cases, they're myths. And with a little bit of additional effort and a little bit of additional study and research, you can dispel them, and that becomes a very important part of your plan. And then the last value is that having a written plan assures your commitment to it. You're not just going to shove it in a drawer and never look at it again. Once you have put some hours into doing this and have identified a strategy, you're not going to give up very easily. And a commitment is necessary. All the research that I have read and all of the companies that I have helped over the years sell their products and services in the international market, they absolutely have to have a passion for doing this. If you don't, you might as well hang up now and say, hey, that was the most important hour or 15 minutes that I've ever spent because now I know I don't have the commitment, and therefore I'm probably not going to be very successful. And hopefully you all won't hang up. It doesn't look like you are, according to the number of calls that I see there lighting up the switchboard. Okay, the length of the plan. A lot of people think that the plan has to be some enormous tome, some telephone book length document that requires, months and months and months of hard work and hiring consultants and so forth. It doesn't. It only has to be a few pages to begin with. It can even be, like our friend at ProStuff, a single page. The main thing and the goal, my goal today, is to get you to create that page and to provide you some of the tools today that will help you do it. And from that one page, it can certainly develop and flower beyond that, and it certainly will evolve as you learn more and as you have more experience. Just some of the questions that we're going to pose today will get you thinking about things in a different way. Soon you will be filling not just a page, but a couple of pages with information that will be very useful to you. Now the process. Process oftentimes begins with these sorts of questions, and don't be overwhelmed by the length of questions because not all of you will have to answer all of them. They're just sort of a range of questions that will apply in some cases to your products and not to others. So let's begin. What does my product serve? The function of it, and will fill in the global marketplace. Might be that you have some special technology that others don't have. Might be that you have a particular kind of consumer good that sells well in the United States, is an attractively priced, and it sells well in the United States because it fits some need of some consumer group. And chances are, because of the globalization of tastes generally, across the world these days, with more and more people entering the middle class and being able to buy consumer goods, to be able to buy services, including goods and services from outside their own country, you can be competitive, and it would be that would be the niche that you occupy. And then the other thing to ask yourself is the modifications that need to be made in order to adapt your product to an international market. Now, it may be that no modifications will be necessary. The starting gate by the gentleman in Ohio did not need any sorts of modifications whatsoever because the starting gates are pretty uniform throughout the world because the size of the bicycles that are twinned with them are pretty standard throughout the world. So he didn't really have to change anything. Now, we have had clients, and there's one that comes to mind in particular, maker of an exercise bike somewhere in the Midwest. And when they began to go with us into countries in Asia, they had to make some changes to their product. And the most significant change, interestingly enough, and you may snicker at this, but the most significant change was the size of the seat on this exercise machine. In Asia, the seats tend to be smaller. Those of you who've traveled there and been on public transportation may be so surprised at the narrowness of the seats. And they explained to me that the reason for this, and probably you've guessed it by now, is because the anatomy of the average Asian person is different than the anatomy of the average North American person, and therefore a seat that fits North American bums is not going to be the size of the seat that fits people in other parts of the world. This was a surprise to the manufacturers of this, and when they sallied forth into the international market, they readily agreed to change the size of the saddle or the seat on this particular piece of equipment, and when they did, there were sales that came forth from Japan and other countries in Asia. So product adaptation, you've probably read about it or heard about it. It's not insignificant, but in many cases there may not be any adaptation needed. It'll be just fine for whatever market you tend to sell it in. And then do you need a special license or certificate from our government in order to ship this product or from the importer's government in order to receive the product? Only about 3% of all goods that are shipped out of the United States need an export license from the U.S. government. So probably you do not fall into any of those categories, but certain food products, certain chemical products, or products with chemicals in them that are applied to the body or ingested, there are certificates that may be necessary, and you'll need to know which ones those are, and we can help you with that, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. Now, do you need to modify the packaging or the labeling? In some cases, with some countries, you will. It came as a very big surprise to a woman who I spoke with just the day before yesterday, who makes, I guess they're scarves made out of wool. Here in the United States, she makes them. They're high-end scarves, and she had a customer in Canada. Well, the Canadian labeling requirements for clothing items are that you have a little tag inside the scarf that says "Made in the United States," and you'll want that in both French and English. So sometimes there are language requirements associated with the labeling that you will need to be aware of as well, and that will be a question to ask going into this and something that you will answer in the plan, and we can help you answer those questions. So by this time, as we go down this list of questions, I hope you're getting the message that I'm just not going to leave you dangling out there at the end of the hour with all these questions and no answers for them. What I'm saying to you is the answers are available. We will help you find the answers, and we will not charge you a single penny for answering these questions. How much will it cost to get the product to the market? Ultimately, your customer is going to want to know what it all costs, and the cost is not just the cost of the materials that go into the product, the cost of the product that you buy from a manufacturer, and you're a wholesaler, so you're going to sell it to the final user in another country, but you also have to add your profit margin to this, and you also have to figure out what it's going to cost to get it from your back door or the back door of the shipper, and you will want to make sure that you know what all the costs are to get it to the customer's ultimate destination. And these costs will include freight. They will include any tariffs or taxes that the country of the buyer will add to that cost as it comes across customs in that country, and there may be some additional taxes to lay on. For example, the value-added tax in Great Britain is scheduled to go up 3%. 3% more than it is now. I think it's 16.5%. It's going to 19.5% on January the 1st. And that means that the folks in Great Britain will be paying 3% more for all imported items, and you will want to know not only that, but you also want to know what that 3% is going to mean in terms of the added cost that you will have to quote the buyer, because many times the buyer will want to know what it costs to get it to them, and this is especially true of those of you who will be selling products via the internet you want to know what the final cost is in order to prevent the buyer from being surprised when the package delivery person comes to their factory, their residence, their office, and demands that they pay more than they expected or they read off of your website. And then finally, your pricing strategy. What's it going to be? Yes, it will include all of these things, but you might want to ask a premium price for your product because it is unusual, and that you probably can get away with higher margins. I shouldn't say get away. I should say you can probably add higher margins going into certain international markets simply because of the cost of living there. And on the other hand, you might want to lowball the price and take less profit than you would normally in the domestic market because you want to establish a customer base there. You can raise the price later as the traffic bears, but as a strategy, you might want to lowball in order to get a leg up in that particular market. That's a strategy, and you'll want to think about that before committing anything as part of the policy that you will follow. Now, some additional questions. Let's look at websites, for example. If you have a website, it's quite possible that a lot of your orders, or some of your orders, may come through your website. Maybe some have already come through your website. Maybe you have ignored those orders because you really weren't sure of the risks involved in selling to a party who's outside the United States, or you didn't understand fully what would be involved in successfully sending that product, so you ignored them. And you are not alone. Some 60% of all orders that come via the Internet to U.S. companies are ignored. That is, the U.S. seller does not respond to the inquiry for one of the reasons that I mentioned, or maybe even others that I haven't considered. So part one of this is to realize that orders are going to come through your website. There are things that you can do to increase the volume of orders that come through your website, and you need to be able to respond to people when they inquire, because this is a sale or a potential sale in the making, and you need to feel competent enough, qualified enough to respond to that party and to agree to satisfy their need and to do it via the website, because you have processes in place and plans in place that will allow you to successfully satisfy that consumer, that purchaser. And so we'll talk a little bit about website and website modifications. Not much, because we have an entire program on it that we offer, and it's coming up, I think, in January, and those of you who are on the mailing list now will get a notice on that one. And it's an entire hour devoted to how you can make your website more international friendly. Then another question, of course, is intellectual property. If it is valuable, and you're worried that it might be ripped off by someone, or that your brand might be used, stolen, or that the reverse engineering could occur and that someone is going to steal your idea and begin making knockoffs in some country that you send it to, then it would be useful to register and get a patent for it, get a trademark for it, one that is not only useful in this country and applies to the United States IPR law, but also abroad as well. And we'll talk in a minute about how you can do that, and a little bit of research on your part. And the process is not onerous, though I am told that there's a considerable wait to get patent approvals these days from the U.S. government, because there's such a backlog, and because the technology these days is so complicated that finding patent examiners who can understand it is not an easy thing, and therefore we've got this big backlog, which we need to fix, because this is important to have these protections in place, and a lot of times companies will not get the investment that they need or looking for if they do not have a patent. Patent pending is useful, but not as useful as having the patent in hand. Now, why are you pursuing international customers? That's a good question to ask. It probably is because you are looking to expand your market. beyond the U.S. domestic market. You probably have been reading in the paper that we're probably as a nation going to be importing less because of our huge budget deficits, balance of trade deficits, and the President is exhorting us, and others are too, including the U.S. Chamber, to export, to make more and export more, and that's going to rebalance our economy in a way that will provide long-term security for the nation and also increase the number of jobs that we have. So you're all to be congratulated for tuning in today and to be thinking the thoughts that you're thinking about expanding your business internationally, because it's playing very well into the concerns that are being expressed all around the world, even in Korea today at the G20 meetings, Germany and China that are, huge balance of trade balance surpluses are being told that they need to consume more, they need to buy more from the United States and sell less to us. That's not going down very well, but let's face it, that's going to be a big part of the solution to rebalancing our economy and making sure that the world economy is rebalanced in a way that is going to assure economic growth for developing as well as developed countries going forward. Now, how about the lessons that you've learned in your previous international sales experiences? Now, this is sort of a exercise in reflective thinking. Now, it may be that you thought you were burned in a previous experience. Maybe you didn't get paid for something that you had shipped to an international buyer. Maybe you had stuff that was caught in some customs problem and either didn't get it back or it took a long time to get it back and you took a loss on it, and you've maybe said, hey, this isn't so good, I don't want to do this again. And so what did you learn from that? The level of preparation that you had, the information that was available to you, the knowledge that you had of the processes. If it was inadequate to the task and it somehow was responsible for not doing well and not succeeding in that transaction, how can your plan make it less likely that those not so positive experiences will be repeated in the future? And a plan can help do that. But you still have to be honest with yourself and say, what didn't go right the first time, and how can I fix it going forward? And I believe that you can. We can together. Okay, the planning process. More questions. Are you fully committed to exporting? We talked earlier about the importance of management commitment for the long term. This is not just something that you want to do for 6 months to see if it's going to be any good or not and then abandon it. I would certainly, here's another time to jump out of the discussion and hang up the telephone and go back to business as usual, because if you're not committed to it for a year, 2 years, 3 years, then it's probably not going to work for you. How much time will it take for implementation? That will in large part depend on the markets that you are looking at and the kind of information and knowledge that you need to acquire, but it's good to have some time frame in mind. Is your production capacity enough to meet the demand? That is, and that's, I think, why the Pro Stuff owner spends a lot of his time in the planning, export planning, to make sure that he has the wherewithal to crank out these hydraulic-powered starting gates and the numbers needed in order to serve customers in the 41 markets he's expanded to. That, for him, was a huge challenge, a bigger challenge than actually finding the customers that went fairly smoothly for him. And I think the finding of it was a combination of his own skills as an international salesperson, and also his association with the Commerce Department that helped him find a lot of these markets. So his focus was mainly on how to churn out the numbers to deal with the demand. A good problem, but nevertheless one that consumed a good bit of his time, and I'm glad to say he's been successful. Now, your personnel. Do you have people on staff that can meet this demand, or do you need to hire some new people, or maybe go to a local college or university and get a student that speaks different languages or is an expert on a culture that you may need expertise on, and you can supplement your current staffing by finding somebody locally there to help you, and do it in a way where you can scale it up so you're not taking on these overhead costs immediately, but that you can do so in a way to see where the business develops over the next year. Additional financing. Do you need money for expansion of your output? Do you need money to purchase raw materials that will go into the final product? Do you need money so that you have cash on hand so that you can offer some terms to the buyer for 30, 60, 90 days or whatever? By the time you get his check, obviously you'll have other costs and so forth, and you may need some additional capital to continue operation and get ready for the next sale while waiting for payment to come in, if your payment strategy is one that actually does provide terms to the buyer. Okay. Then where will that financing come from? There are programs, which we'll talk about in a second. Will it come from relatives? Will it come from personal savings? Will it come from a second mortgage? I don't think so. It could come from someplace else. And will it come from the government, which has some interesting assistance for exporters, which I'll briefly touch on in a second. What is the source of the funding? Here's the source, and this is the Small Business Administration has products, loan products for exporting, something called the Export Express, which has just been doubled in value up to from $250,000 to $500,000 per borrower. And this is their website, and you can go there and read all about their products under the jobs bill that was just passed by Congress and signed by the President. There's some additional funding for small businesses who are looking for export markets, and you'll want to familiarize yourself. Supposedly they have a 24-hour turnaround time to get an answer on whether you qualify for one of their loans, which for the federal government is lightning speed, nanoseconds. 24 hours. You can't even often get that from a commercial bank, but SBA is saying that for their Export Express, that's the amount of time that it will take. Now, here's another big source of export financing for small business. It's the Export-Import Bank, which is part of the United States and part of the United States government. And so, you know, this is also a good place. The products are complementary with SBA. They have higher loan maximums. Their funding has also been increased by Congress, and they now will loan up to $5 million. It's 5.5 for manufacturing companies. And they also have products that insure your goods against wars and political upheaval. Not that that's going to happen in Great Britain or Canada, but it could happen in other parts of the world where you might want to sell things to. And they also will have loans for your buyer. So if your buyer in another country needs money in order to purchase the products that you have, there is a product from the Export-Import Bank that funds the buyer to buy your stuff. That part of the agreement is they buy from you, not take the money and buy from someplace else. So you can tell them that these programs exist, and if you have machines or other big-ticket items that you don't have the financing for, the bank will consider funding the buyer, the foreign buyer. Okay, now for the planning process itself, questions to ask for you, and this is, what is this all going to cost? Be real about the cost. You might want to, quantify your own time that will be going into this, but what sort of money do you need in order to make this happen? And what are your projected sales going to be for the first year? Maybe there won't be any in the first year. It'll all be planning and marketing and promotion. But it's a good idea to have some projections, as the pro stuff people did. That was something they spent some time thinking, how much, what is reasonable, how many units can I sell? And they surprised themselves by going way beyond their projections because the product was so popular and they were so successful and effective at marketing it. And what additional expertise in trade will you need, and how will you get it? Webinars. Congratulations, you've taken your first step in export planning, and to be successful, to have your plan successful by taking this webinar today, there are a lot of others that we offer. Hopefully you'll be a frequent participant in these. They're all free. How-to books. We've got a good one. It's called A Basic Guide to Exporting. It came out last year. It's available on Amazon.com for about $19. It goes into great detail. It has a chapter on export planning, but it also has chapters on freight, on regulations, on packaging, and it also has some great success stories in there that I think you'll find, very inspirational. Small companies that have been very, very successful in their international activities, and the range of products and services is truly unbelievable. Things that you've never thought, might be as successful in an international market as they were here have been, and then some. And I'm talking about, services such as franchises. There's 2 or 3 franchises that I never heard of before, one including 2 men in a truck. It's a moving service, basically, that was started in Minnesota, and they have franchised it now, and with their logos and the other certain things that they provide, and now there's like 10 of their franchises in 10 different countries, and they're making, very, very nice profits as a result of an idea that took root in Minnesota, and they were smart about it, and they quickly scaled it up internationally, and now they're doing extremely well. Again, with the help of Commerce Department and some of these other federal agencies that I've talked to you about. And of course, what sales channels are you going to use? Is the Internet going to be a big one for you? Are you going to find some very excellent distributors, or are you going to go directly to end users, or are you going to do retail? There's all kinds of different possibilities. It really depends on your capabilities and what is best for that particular market. And then how will you handle returns on warranty issues? This is very important for web-based businesses because you want to state those policies up front. If it's broken when it arrives, will you take it back? If people don't like it, or if it's the wrong size, will you take it back? Who will pay? These sorts of things are very important to think through because customer service ramifications and financial ones as well. And of course, some countries have very strict customer and consumer protection laws, and you'll need to know about those because there may be certain requirements that you'll have to do, whether it's your policy or not. You may have to take back things if the buyer doesn't want them, simply because it's the law of that country that states that you will. And then what about trade shows? This is a very good way to exhibit. If you have something to exhibit and there's a show which is in your general industry area, there are hundreds of them in the United States every year, and many of these shows bring international delegations to the show here in the United States. So if you go to Las Vegas or Chicago or Miami, where the shows, different industry shows are held, favorite places to go, there's going to be tens of thousands of foreign buyers who come. And so without actually having to buy a ticket, get a passport, and go anyplace, you can meet these people and you can actually make sales to them. And we'll talk a little bit about that in a minute and where you can get information. There's also international trade shows, which the U.S. government serves in the sense that there are personnel there from the embassies that will help you navigate your way through those shows and also introduce you to foreign buyers who they are aware of. And often these are very inexpensive to do because the exhibition space is sometimes a lot cheaper than it is in this country. There's a U.S. pavilion, which you can rent for a couple $100s a day and then get all this assistance as people actually bring buyers to the booth where you can make presentations to them and hopefully make sales. And here, for those of you who have never thought about trade shows but might want to make this part of your plan to do a trade show, usually they take about a year to get ready for. This is not a year of labor, but mainly they're a year from now, and so you'll want to, first of all, find out if they're the best show that you can go to, and then make the arrangements. So they could be 12 months out, and you'll want to start looking around now, and here's a great place to do it. And you'll get a copy of this presentation, so don't worry about trying to squint and see URL there because you'll be able to view it later at your leisure, but go to this site and you'll be able to read up on the 40 or 50 shows that the U.S. Department of Commerce has under its International Buyer Program, and these are shows where the buyers in very large numbers come to cities in the United States that would be easy for you to get to, and you can meet them there and hopefully make sales. Okay, and there is a list. In this case, it's renewable energy, and there's all sorts of information coming up in November. Clearly, that's too soon to put into a plan, but usually these things are run every year, so you'll have a chance next year if you've missed it this year. And then trade missions is another possibility. Have you ever thought of yourself, and this is certainly true for small businesses who are now going on these missions, you pay for your transportation costs and your hotel costs and a rather modest fee to get the services that come with these missions. But you know, there's a bunch going to India in after the first of the year in February in a lot of different industries. There's some going to the Middle East in the early spring, and these are great markets: Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates. They've got, you know, billions of cash. They're looking for all kinds of things to upgrade their economies and improve their lives there. They like American products, U.S.-made products, and if you go in a mission, you're with a U.S. individual, usually an official of the government, who can open doors for you and make things happen that would not be so easy if you went by yourself. Okay, and some additional questions now. Credit policies, is it cash in advance? This is, of course, a low-risk way, and many U.S. businesses do this and are happy with it, and buyers are prepared to provide the cash in advance. Letters of credit are another way, and this basically is a document that will automatically transfer money into your bank account, excuse me, from the buyer's account, and the bankers use this process, and the money is transferred seamlessly from one bank to another, but only on the delivery of the goods to dockside. So nobody gets paid until the stuff arrives, but then when it does, you are guaranteed payment at that point. And how will you ship? Will you use a freight forwarder? There's probably one in your area now. These folks are very experienced in being able to find the best transportation for your item at the lowest possible cost. Get it there when you promised your buyer that it will get there. Do you use the Postal Service? You might not know, but the Postal Service has international services, package services. These are 70-pound boxes and less. They are traceable, and they oftentimes arrive, in several days of departure, and it's very, very inexpensive for you and for your buyer. And so there are many, many possibilities, including the well-known express freight companies, UPS, FedEx, and so forth. And then how will you make use of government export assistance programs? Call them. And just as ProStuff did, you can call them. There's one in your state, maybe in the city that you're in now, and they can help you with the planning process, but more importantly, they can help you find the buyers and deal with all of the country-specific requirements that you may need to know ahead of time. Documents, yes, there will be documents. They include the export report that goes to the Department of Commerce. It's an electronic service now, and it basically, if it's over $2,500, you have to fill one of those out. Easy to do. We can help you do that. Certificates of origin are sometimes needed by certain countries. We can help you fill those out and know if one is required. And then what countries can't you absolutely send anything to? There are a few. But even in some of these countries, it's possible to send agricultural products and medical equipment. You need a license to do it. The government provides the license. But for most countries, you do not need a license. If you do, we can help identify whether your product needs one or not and make sure you get the license that you will need. But as I say, only 3% of all goods need them. And starting in January, even fewer will, because the U.S. government is going to liberalize some of its export licensing requirements, mainly saying that some of the technologies that we have either not allowed to be sold outside of the United States or in need of a license no longer need them, and we want to grow the economy. We don't feel that these restrictions pose a national security risk to the country, so we're going to ease these restrictions, and more things can be sold than ever without a license now and beginning after January. Now, here's just a little example, and with your indulgence, we may go a little bit beyond the hour mark because we did start 6 or 7 minutes later. So if you don't mind, I'll try to whip through these things quickly, but remember, you'll get the entire presentation. You can look at these things at your convenience, and you can call us if you have questions on the rest of the presentations. But let's just say we start a company called Solar Cells, and it makes solar panels like the one you see in the picture, and we're going to develop a plan around this business concept. And so we are going to put a little mission statement, maybe a paragraph long. Why are you going to begin exporting? And it's simply because we can make these things very competitively here in the United States. We understand that there is a huge demand for alternative energy. There's going to be one forever now. This is a good business to get into. We know that there's some competition out there, but we think our service is great, and we make a terrific product, and that's why we're doing it. And so make this just a couple of paragraphs. Needn't be more than that. And then some goals. We're going to, here's just some examples. There could be 1,000 of them. Hopefully there won't be. Hopefully there'll be a handful that you've carefully thought through. We're going to use e-commerce to increase our sales by 5% over the next couple of years. We're going to participate in markets outside the United States where 97% of all buyers live. We're going to improve our product line, marketing, and management by learning from international customers, because we know that this is a great source of learning, and we can become more competitive if we learn about the different requirements of different groups of buyers and consumers from other parts of the world. We're going to locate one new country distributor in the next in 2 new country markets within the next 2 years, and we're going to sell via our website. We're going to use eBay, Alibaba, some of the other e-commerce platforms that will increase our sales even more. And the third part of this would be the resources that we'll need. We're going to start with, this is just for the sort of marketing of the product. We already have money to produce it, and we're producing it for the domestic market, let's say, which will cover assistance finding these distributors and maybe participating in one government-sponsored trade show or trade mission over the next 12 to 24 months. And we'll use those funds to send a person from the company on those things in hopes of finding some buyers and filling some orders during the course of the trip. And then we're going to fix our website, or we're going to create one from scratch that we can further internationalize with the help of the commercial service and other advisors who can do this for us for free, but we understand they know a lot about how to make our site more international friendly than it is now, and this might be just by including some text on the front page that welcomes international buyers, a success story when we get one of an international transaction that we've had, and maybe some information about shipping that will be of particular interest to the foreign buyer. And we might also put a currency converter. They're free. You can download them on your web pages. That will allow the international buyer who's going to look at your products to be able to calculate if there are prices there on the site. We'll be able to transfer them into the local currency so that they know how much it's going to cost. And maybe we're going to add a half-time position to help us with the marketing of the international part of the plan. And then here are our resources. What are they? Several of our people have traveled abroad in the past, so we can take advantage of their knowledge. One staff member is going to take a course at the local community college on how to export, or a course that's offered by some of the U.S. government agencies that we've talked about in our hometown. And one staff member will research free and low-cost government export assistance. That will be their job for the next several weeks, is to make these inquiries, find out who can help us, what sort of free money is available, if any, or low-cost money that we can take advantage of. But by all means, we're going to, spend the next several months just building up our internal knowledge base and capability, and we're going to do it as inexpensively as we possibly can. Current trends and practices. Okay, our revenues have grown 4% for the past 4 years. Our product is sold via the Internet and through a network of domestic distributors. And occasionally, we get the unsolicited international sale, all to individual buyers, but with a few inquiries for potential distributors. All that's good, and we can use all that information to capitalize on what we already know and what we've already done and make the most of it. Now, your capacity. This could be another part of the plan. And again, you're just talking about a couple of paragraphs here, not pages. We have the capacity to increase production 30% without additional capital investment and customize for your business and products. And, there is also, if you're a manufacturing company, and this suggests that you are, there is additional federal assistance. There's an organization called the Manufacturing Extension Program that will actually send people out to the place where your stuff is made, and they will do an analysis of your current setup. And these are engineers and other people. I think it's either free or very, very low cost, but they'll give you sort of a plan at the end of their visit which says, if you reconfigured this and have you thought about that, and they will provide you with ways to increase the efficiency that you have so that you can ramp up more inexpensively in order to fill the orders that hopefully will be coming from international buyers. Okay, and then here's the target market, and these are some things that you will do or could consider doing. You will pursue the leads that are generated by the export.gov website. Export.gov has trade leads on them. All you need to do is get a password by putting your email address in there, and you can go there as frequently as you like and see what new leads in your industry have come from the 100-plus offices that the U.S. Department of Commerce and the State Department have all over the world. And you'll also investigate Singapore as a regional market for Southeast Asia. For instance, Singapore is a great platform in the area, and they have all kinds of connections with Indonesia, China, other places. It's a great place for doing business, and we have an office there. And this is something that they're promoting very heavily is, use us as a platform. We'll introduce you to distributors that are based in Singapore but have connections all over Asia, and they will help represent your product in these places and can generate some substantial sales for you. And then, we'll look at the past 4 years for effects of recession and 2010 partial years for signs of recovery. These are just sort of looking at data in these countries to see how quickly they're coming out of recession and what their growth rates have been and what the projected GNP and other growth rates or other indices are going forward. And you'll look at free trade agreement countries. We have now 13 free trade agreements around the world, some of them in pretty big markets, Chile, Peru, and Latin America. We have one with Singapore. We have one with Israel. We have one with Jordan. We have one with, of course, Canada, Mexico, and CAFTA. These places are good to target because, why? There's no tariffs, zero tariffs. So our products are very competitive in those countries, and we're talking now about maybe having one with Korea and Colombia, and if those happen within the next year, and there's a good chance that they will, those markets will also be good to look at for the same reason. Okay, and then you'll look at other kinds of data that's commonly available, and you'll also talk to the commercial service, which has a lot of information that they'll happily share with you for nothing. And you'll look at this. This is market research. Every country where we operate, and there's over 100 of them, has a country commercial guide. And in that guide, for any country that you might think of, you will learn a lot about the capabilities and prospects there. Best prospects is a section in all of the reports, and it will tell you, which things are hottest and likely to be more so going forward. You register for this, you look at the reports, we can help you interpret them if you have any questions, but generally they're written for the layperson, and they're full of strategic advice and hints and tips that you can use in your planning process and in your plan. And then the U.S. Census Bureau has great statistics and data. It's usually by harmonized code number. We can get you the harmonized code number for the product and service, the product that you have. And it's by country, so we can tell if we're selling our solar panels, we can easily tell how many solar panels they are importing and at what price, so we can get a sense of whether we'll be competitive on price. And the good news for you today is that I just got permission before this call began to offer for free this service to you, 3 months for free, and it's extendable to 3 more months after that, so 6 months of free service. It's worth $150, and we will send you this when we send you the recording of this in a couple of days. We will send you the URL that you will use to get into this database, and you can identify the product that you're looking for in the country that you are looking at, or countries. And this is the website, usatradeonline.gov. You'll see this when you get the whole presentation in a day or two. And this is the way it sort of is laid out. You get these reports by harmonized code number. And if you don't have the harmonized code number, then take the webinar next Wednesday at 2 o'clock, where we're going to go over how to find your harmonized code number and how to calculate duties and taxes. That'll be next Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. If you haven't signed up for it yet, you should do so. Over 230 people already, but we do have capacity for more, so within the next 24 hours, please sign up for that, and you will know how to find your harmonized code number by the end of that session, guaranteed. And there's our solar cells that we will then create the report from, and we'll show you how to do that. And there are all these different countries that import solar cells, and this is the from December 2003 year to date. They have more current information. I think it's 2008 now, and it will give you the value in dollars, and you'll be able to see the size of the market, the percent increase year on year, and get a good idea of where these things are going and whether your product will be competitive, not just for solar cells, but with everything. And here's another good resource for trying to identify the market that is going to be best for you. World Bank Statistics Forecast website gives the forecast for all of these different countries over the next 3 to 5 years, talks about the issues that will affect their economic performance. And then the risk. It's mostly centered on non-payment. This is, again, a section in the plan. What is the risk? Goods held up in the foreign customs. Our cash and advance policy largely mitigates the risk. And you just sort of be, based on what's gone before, this is, again, a changeable document if the risk profile changes. If you're going to Canada, for example, your risk is going to be very low. If you're going to Nigeria, the risk is going to be higher. But nevertheless, Nigeria is a good market for U.S. goods, despite all of the emails that are coming to you offering you huge sums of money if you just hand them over your bank account number. For every one of those, there's 50 people who are absolutely interested in buying U.S. products, have the money to do so. We have an office in Lagos, Nigeria that is eager and ready to help you if you suggest if you can handle the risk profile there. And they can help you manage that. They can help you populate this part of your export plan by giving you information on it. And then, of course, what will your credit policies be? Cash in advance. You certainly can take a debit card or credit card via your website or over the telephone, and you'll create, and then you'll check with the card insurer. I did this the other day for a person who's selling a piece of artwork out of her gallery in Oakland. She was unsure of whether the person calling from a oil rig in the North Sea off of the coast of Great Britain was legitimate. I asked her to run the card while I was on the phone. She did. It was good. The card had not been stolen. She was euphoric and has now become a major exporter of art goods once she got past this issue with the credit card. And now she has a policy, and she understands what to do and what not to do. And that also includes letters of credit and other terms of payment. And the return policy we talked about before, if you have something that is, you're going to fix it, it's part of some warranty, then, you want to think that through, and we can help you do that. And the shipping, what is your policy for shipping? Which of the providers, maybe several of them, are you going to use? You might have links on your website to them, so people can see, who you're using and how long it takes to get from one place to the other and how much it might cost. And these are the websites that you'll see, and you can go there, and this is the international tools that all of these different leading freight companies have. And look at these sites, compare them, see the services that they have. They also have country profiles. They have videos. Some of our videos are on the FedEx site, and you can view them and just increase your knowledge by using these free sources. And that's what a great deal if it's free, right? I've given you a free thing already as we approach 5 minutes past the hour, and I'm going to race through now and finish up with a flourish. Freight forwarders are good people to talk to. Use this as you do your research. What do they do? How much is it going to cost you to use their services? What kind of documentation will they help you with? Probably most of it. And make sure it's a good local licensed freight forwarder. And you can always get a referral from our friends at the Customs Broker and Freight Forwarders Association of America. They're here in Washington, and you can call them or email them, and they'll be happy to give you a referral in your area. And their members have to be licensed, and they have to pass the U.S. Customs examination for customs brokers. So you're in good hands with those folks. Export licenses we touched on already. You probably don't need one, but if we do, you can go to this website and you read all you need to read about the export controls and what you need to do as far as due diligence and making sure you don't sell to bad people. All right, and health certificates. You might need one, especially as we mentioned before, if it's beauty products or food supplements. Anything that goes on the body or in the body may require a health certificate. The Food and Drug Administration provides them. Other countries accept them. Here's the website that you can go to, and you read about the certificates and how to get them. We can also help you get them here, too, in Washington, where I'm based, and we'd be glad to assist you in doing that. Language laws we already talked about a little bit with that example on the Canadian scarf, or scarves headed to Canada, and it's just important to know if there are language laws for the country that you are targeting, what they are. We can help you identify what there will be. I mentioned to you earlier the importance of the HS code number. This is the HS code in the second bullet for solar cells. This is a 10-digit number. The first 6 numbers are recognized by all customs people in all countries in all parts of the world. So when you send the box with your cells in it, it's that 6-digit code there. The last 4 digits is U.S. specific, and we can help you find the code for your product. You put it on the shipping forms, it needs to be there, and then you use the 6-digit code to determine what the duties and taxes will be for each of the markets that you're selling to. And that's the search engine for the Schedule B, which is also known as Harmonized Code. Next week, we're going to go into much more detail, so I won't do it now. But there are tools available for you to find these things yourself. It's not rocket science, but it does take a few minutes and someone like your friends here at the Commercial Service to walk you through how to find it. Intellectual property we already talked about and the importance of protecting it. Here is a website, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office tells you everything you need to know about trademarks and how to get one, how to get a patent, how to get a trademark for your product, and it's pretty easy to follow. You may need a lawyer at some point, but hopefully not. And there are tools, self-service tools that you can use here to get that process going. Documents, lots of different ones, not too many though. Main one is the commercial invoice, bill of lading, and certificates of origin. In the book, A Basic Guide to Exporting, all of those documents are there with instructions on how to fill them out. Your freight forwarder can help you do that. We can help you do that. And after you've done it once, you won't need any more help because you'll know how to do it. And here are the export documents. You can take a look at them online on our website, export.gov, and under export documents. All right, and there's the book that we talked to you about earlier. You might consider getting that. As I say, it's a great investment, a little less than $20 to have it delivered to you from Amazon.com. A great book, bestseller, and I would highly encourage you to have a copy of that at your office there to share with your colleagues, because it will be an invaluable resource for you. And these videos are also available. There are now 13 of them, and they cover all kinds of subjects: NAFTA, AES, what is a freight forwarder you see there. It's a very, very good series. I think 100,000 people have seen it so far in the year since it's been launched, and you should go there and take a look, because it'll definitely help you. Okay, and then pricing strategies. You know, you'll need one, and this sort of takes you through, when you have a chance to look at it, how you can determine the landed cost of your product. In this example, it's in Mexico. Everything that goes into costing your product to an international market, so you won't be surprised, and neither will your buyer. And then we do have an entire webinar that we'll be offering after the first of the year on website tactics, how to create a website that really is a very strong sales tool for you. Take a look at the bullets here when you have a moment, but know that we know a lot about how to do this, and we'll be happy to help you and advise you on how to make your website as effective as it possibly can. And then here is just a little thing that you also might consider. It's a device that I put together. It's the action plan. If you're anything like me, all of this stuff that I've already gone over is fine, and you may be completely dazed by now with all of the things there are to consider. I need something that's going to help me get from step 1 to step 2, and this is what I've created for myself. Hopefully it'll be useful to you, where you prioritize things, you create an objective, you have a task, you have the resources involved, you have a schedule of completion, and then you have a way in which to measure how you have done in those particular tasks. So take a look at this, and I think it'll be very helpful to you as you go forward, and it will make sure that you make the most of the time that you've invested in this and the great hopes and aspirations that you have for it. And that brings us to the end of the program. I'm sorry for going over. This is the first time I've done this, the first time we've done this, so in that sense, you've been wonderful and great sports for being the first audience for this. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we will take some questions. I know if you have to rush off, I understand that, but if you have some questions, I'm happy to answer them. And as your plans begin to develop, if you'd like to share them in the strictest of confidence, I would be happy to advise you further, and I know the folks at the local export assistance centers would be happy to help you as well. So you're not alone in this, and feel free to reach out, and we'll be glad to assist you as you move forward on this great adventure, and it really is. I think personally you're going to profit greatly from this, and hopefully professionally as well. And I can't thank you enough for sharing the time with me this afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you, Dad, for this very helpful and chock full of information presentation. Operator, could you please open the line for questions?
Thank you. At this time, if you'd like to ask a question, please press *1 on your touch-tone phone. You'll be required to record your name. Once again, to ask a question, please press *1. It'll just be one moment. We have a question from Santana Fora. Your line is open.
All right, thank you. Dr. Barry, you mentioned a lot about, these success stories about, these small companies. And I was just wondering if there is some place that we can go to and check out these success stories, because I believe that it could be quite inspirational for many of the small companies that are thinking if they have the capability to export or not.
Yes, that's a great question, and of course, in the book, there there are 17 stories, and the way to access the book also, or just the stories, if you type in a basic guide to exporting 10th edition into your web browser, it will probably take you to a number of sites that offer free downloads of the book. And so that would be one way to go. A lot of people, just aren't very comfortable printing off 285 pages or whatever. But if you wanted to just go to the website, the success stories, and just look at some of the things that are of particular interest to you, that might be a way to do it, and it's another way to do it without spending a penny.
Thank you very much, Dr. Berry.
Thanks for your question.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Paul. Sir, your line is open.
Yes, I'm trying to find out. In the process of setting up my company, I'm not a manufacturer representative. Is the format to set up a company better under an export management company or more of a consulting firm getting involved with helping manufacturers?
Right. Well, I think a consulting firm might be the best, especially if you are not specializing in one particular kind of product. If your aim is to help different businesses with different product lines and different industries, then I think the consulting model is the best way to go. And I think we need more companies out there like this because, as you heard, there's so many companies that want to export but are afraid to do so or reluctant to do so, mainly because they don't have the information. And if you can provide them the information and you can develop some contacts in these markets where you can do some, I guess the word is matchmaking, then I think you're going to provide a very valuable service, especially if the companies are small and medium size. That's anywhere from 5 employees to 500. And then, they can rely on you, and they don't have to rely on so much on their internal resources, which, if they're smaller, aren't going to be very great.
That is what I'm finding at the time, is that a lot of these small and medium-sized companies don't have the resources or the commitment to this process. So I am in the process of developing those relationships.
That'd be great. And then if you can refine these tools that are available to all businesses, but more importantly, bring them to the businesses that need them, that could be a sweet spot in the market. The U.S. government, for a lot of reasons, cannot serve everyone that needs serving. And second, not everyone wants the U.S. government in their business. And third, some people just would rather not have the government involved whatsoever. It doesn't sound like you or anyone listening today is in that category, but there are a lot of people out there who just, would rather deal with someone in their local community in the private sector. And there's nothing at all wrong. In fact, it's absolutely right. Taking what you've learned here, and you can learn from us, and taking our resources and presenting them to people in a way that will help them.
Thank you very much, Doug Berry.
Thank you for your question.
Yes, if I may add to what you said, too, about export management companies, one thing to be aware of that export management companies typically take titles to the goods that they sell, and they make profit on the markup. They may charge commission depending on type of product that they are handling in the export market. So those are some of the things that you want to think about. Do I want to hold the title? Do I want to be, how intimately involved you want to be with the companies that you represent?
That's a great point.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Our next question comes from Richard Graff. Sir, your line is open.
Thank you. Doug, I am a consultant in the export industry, and a lot of the very small and some even the medium-sized companies that I consult with, and I'm basically with a credit and finance background, it's shocking to find out how little they know about export compliance laws and regulations.
Yes.
I know it's a scary subject. I don't want to scare them away from doing it. I just want to make sure that they know all that they have to as far as complying with things like the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, knowing about the denied parties and denied persons list,
yes,
especially designated nationals, sanctioned boycotts, technology transfers, deemed exports. These are the things that that I get involved in, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the new exporter doesn't even know what kind of a question to ask.
That's exactly right. That's a good observation. And thank goodness there are people like you out there who have this capability and background. And thank goodness there's this great network of freight forwarders that we have that have the knowledge in many of the areas that you mentioned. And thank goodness there is, folks here like Ruja, myself, and others who will answer your calls on these topics Monday through Friday during the business day, and we will then, and if we don't know the answer, we'll refer you to the experts in the government who can tell you what you can and can't do. But don't be discouraged. Again, yes, there are some things that you need to do, some due diligence that goes beyond what you would normally do if you were doing business within the United States. But this is all knowable, and there's a network, a community of people who can get the answers for you, and you shouldn't be intimidated by it. Would you agree?
Yes, I would.
Wonderful.
The one problem I do have is usually trying to tell the people, check out before you start building product for your potential customer. You may find out that you may not be allowed to even ship into that country, or if it falls on, especially designated nationals list or something like that, you cannot do business with them. You can't even really communicate with them.
That's very good advice. Very good advice.
By the time they get to the freight forwarder and ask, it's usually too late.
That is true. Yes. So that's my plan. It's all about the plan.
Yes.
And if everyone out there, we've learned anything after this hour and 50 minutes, it's have one. 1 page, 3 pages, 5 pages, but by all means have one.
Yes.
Thanks so much for your question.
Okay.
Take care.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Who else has a question out there? This is a great discussion. Keep it going.
Thank you. We have a question from David Hoff. So your line is open.
Thank you. Doug, I think this is just going to turn into a comment from him because the previous caller asked the question that I was interested in. So,
by all means.
It's been a great program, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's great. Good luck to you. Any other questions?
We have one more question from Brian Feminoy, so your line is open.
Hi, this is Brian.
Hi, Brian.
You mentioned earlier that the ease of the export control from January next year. I wonder where we can find more specific information about that. And follow-up question is, in the past, we have been contacting DOC Washington, D.C. office in terms of classified EAR classifications. Is there a expedited process or other new contacts we can go for help in this area?
Yes, both good questions. The first part of the question is that the new regulations are in the process of being worked out now, mainly at the Defense Department, which has sort of the biggest dog in this fight. But they're fully on board in taking a look at all of the different products that have to have licenses now or are otherwise under some restrictions to export. And everyone that I've talked to expects major revisions, major simplification. Also very likely that the Treasury Department and the Commerce Department, which now manage 2 different parts of this, there will be one place to call to get the information. And it not only will be streamlined, but a lot more things will be available for sale. When the new regulations will come out, it's unclear. It's going to be after the first of the year at some point. I'm sure that it will be widely promoted in the media, and of course the BIS, the Bureau of Industry and Security website, one of the sites that's in the slides that you'll get a copy of, they will probably have it first before anyone, and I would bookmark that site and start going back there after, say, the 15th of January. Now, the second part of your question, there is an expedited process now available for submitting your license requests or your applications. You have to go through this process in order for them to give you a final determination about whether a license is needed. And it is information about the program is available on that website. It's www.BIS, B as in boy, I as in Sam, D as in David, O, C as in cat, .gov. And on the site there, it will explain to you what this expedited process is.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for your question. Who else?
Okay, our next question comes from Santana Boris, so your line is open.
Thank you. Dr. Barry, in your experience, what kind of problems do most small businesses encounter when they first get into this business of exporting?
All right. Good question. The most common ones are probably matters that deal with the freight issues and the documentation. What documents are needed for what country, and how much does it cost to get the goods from one place to another. And as I mentioned earlier, it's in the plan outline there where there's certain tools that you use to identify the documents that are needed for each country. The first thing is to identify the country that you want to do business in. And this process is partly a matter of, maybe common sense, what your capabilities are, near versus far, English speaking versus non-English speaking. Then, what will be uncovered in the course of the research that you will do and that we can help you do is to look at some of this data that's readily available, but which, not many people in the United States look at or know where to find it. Now just go through those slides and look at some of the websites that the slides lead you to, and you will find this data. And it's not that difficult to interpret. You look basically at the GNP, the gross national product of these countries. You look at the UN site or the World Bank site for a sense of, what the next 2 or 3 years are going to look like in terms of growth. You look at what the size of the middle class is and what their average income is. And then you look at some of that data about what they're buying from the United States and from other places already, and then you can get a sense of what you might need. Now, the other part, too, is that you can call my colleague at any of the embassies in any of the countries in the world. Just get on the right time zone, and I can give you the phone number, Ruja can give you the phone number, the email, and you say to them, I have this widget that's selling pretty well here in the United States. I wonder if it will sell in Costa Rica. And they will tell you what they think of your product, and based on the knowledge of the market, they can come back to you in a few days. It may cost a few dollars, but not very much to do this. And you can actually do some primary market research by calling our colleagues and interviewing them over the telephone or on email, and you can make some educated decisions about what market you should go into if you're doing it in a proactive way. So I would say, number one, it's what market to go into, and then number two, how to get your product, how to find a buyer, and then number three, how to get the product there. And we can assist you with all three of those things.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. These are great questions, by the way.
Thank you, sir. At this time, we're showing no further questions.
All right, wonderful. So I will say then thanks again for tuning in. You will get this presentation in the next few days, which will include the audio part, the slide part, and also the email address and the password to get in and look at some of this research data that's available for no cost for the next 3 to 6 months. Okay, Ruja?
Yes, I just wanted to add thank you again, Doug, and I'm afraid since this is all the time that we have, we need to finish this presentation. But remember, for those of you whose questions we either didn't answer or you want to ask them offline, you may want to contact either Doug or Asset Trade Information Center. We have a number of international trade specialists that specialize in different regions and sectors, and we'd be more than happy to either, like Doug said, help you or direct you or connect you to the right folks. And also, please, if you had to forget, most of what Doug said, hopefully not, but if you remember 1-800-USA-TRADE and export.gov, you can find Doug and a lot of information that he's responsible for on either website and on webinar series and so on And we certainly would like also to remind you that Doug will be our presenter at the next webinar in the Basic Guide to Exporting series. That webinar will take place on November 17th and again at 2 o'clock, and will focus, as Doug mentioned, on identifying HS codes and finding out duties or calculating duties and taxes. Again, thanks everyone, and that's all for today. Thank you.
Thank you. You may disconnect at this time.